Some big conclusions coming out of Anfield after Liverpool's 2-0 victory over Bologna in their first home match of the Champions League this season. My first of the big conclusions is that I actually quite enjoyed this version of the Champions League. Why? Well, first of all, we don't have to play Bologna again. We've already played AC Milan. We've now had that little Italian tryst that we all enjoy in the Champions League. And not only that, but we know that there isn't a return leg. We know that outthinking this manager, outdoing this manager, doesn't give him some ammo for that second leg, but also puts us in a very strong position moving forward. A lot of games still to go, I get it. But when you are looking at the Champions League this season, you're not just looking at your own group, you're looking at every other team in there. And so as soon as the Liverpool game finishes, I'm flicking over to the Real Madrid game, I'm flicking over to see what Juve are doing late on, I'm flicking over to look at all the other big movers and shakers within at least the top 16 to see roughly, what Real Madrid are doing form-wise, where they've been frustrated, those kind of things, but also just where we sit in terms of all these Champions League sides. And I think it's a really good way of getting people involved and interested in the whole European competition, and not just the microcosm of football that is that four. Not even that I don't even think, does that even count as a microcosm? Yeah. Anyway, the point is that this microcosm of a game this evening did prove a lot to this Liverpool team and did show a lot about where we're at this season. I think the overall takeaway for me is, Alisson was speaking about it a couple of weeks ago in a pre-match. A couple of other players have spoken about it in a pre-match. Curtis Jones, Alexis McAllister, Alisson Becker. All these guys have spoken about. We felt that there was another level that this team could go to. We knew that Klopp was very capable of putting this kind of squad together, and we were very capable of getting to that next level. But Slot has brought in a new energy. With that new energy, I think a lot of people expected this side not to be tripped up over small things. And so far, there have been a couple of small things, I'd say, in the Champions League, but also in the Premier League, where it just looks as if they've taken their foot off the gas a little, where maybe they've slightly underestimated the opposition, where maybe they've slightly misjudged what the matchups are in terms of just quality compared to this Liverpool team. And sometimes you could see Bologna were coming back into this game. Now, there are a couple of different ways to approach this. The first one is, are Liverpool underestimating the opposition? Sure, that's one thing. That may go with like an arrogance or maybe like a slight sloppiness that we have attributed to this team over the last couple of years at times. Or it might go the other way, where actually the opposition teams will play well in certain sections of these games. And as much as we speak about Slot wanting control and wanting to constantly be on the ball, there are times where Liverpool are going to try and bait presses and they are going to try and bait the opposition out and bring them down the field and then counter-attack. But sometimes that can go a little far the other way. And, I've spoken about this constant jab that Liverpool seem to keep the opposition on the end of. Sometimes you can allow them inside and they can start beating you up a little bit. And I think with that comes what Bologna did to Liverpool in that key couple of moments this evening where they hit the bar, they had a couple of other opportunities, the ball just kind of sailed close and their fans got a little excited. And the commentary began to sort of work up this narrative of, maybe Liverpool are a little more vulnerable than they thought here. Possibly. I'm trying to work out who thought Liverpool weren't vulnerable at that point. Any side in the Champions League is obviously going to make you vulnerable. They were one of the strongest teams in their own league last season. Granted, Motta was the manager then, all those kind of things, but you get my point. Like, they're still a strong side, and you could see the strength within the team and also the motivation. All of that aside, I still think Liverpool controlled the majority of this game. And I never really felt like even if, we saw Bologna do something, Liverpool felt like they were just sort of going through the gears. There was never really a need for Liverpool to, step up significantly and try and match them. Is that still a little bit of concern for me when I'm looking forward in the Champions League? Absolutely. Even when I'm looking forward in the Premier League. I see that October, I see that November, and I just think, so far, we still haven't been challenged as a team, and there are some big challenges coming. And when I look at the space that Bologna exploited, when I think, they just didn't get that final pass away, they just didn't seem to engage like the striker's brain or that killing instinct that you need to pick off this Liverpool team, it still makes me think, how are we going to fare against Chelsea when there are overloads in the box? How are we going to fare against an Arsenal, Real Madrid, Leverkusen that we have next in the Champions League? There are so many different questions that I still feel are slightly unanswered. And even Slot himself acknowledged it. He's spoken about we haven't really played all that much of a challenging team yet. Maybe slightly insulting to a couple of those teams if they really want to be insulted. But I also just think he's being Dutch real and slightly Dutch honest if we're being Dutch honest. Point is, Liverpool still had to put in a performance, but what they are doing is growing into each of those positions. Ryan Gravenberch looks very at home at either side of the six in that midfield. Alexis McAllister seems very able to step up to accommodate whatever it is that Gravenberch is trying to do, and those two seem to have quite a good understanding between the two of them, but also with the back two behind them and the 10 in Szoboszlai immediately ahead of them. More on Szoboszlai in a second. The point is with Gravenberch, every time I see him out there, I see him adding another aspect to his game, trying something else. There were a couple of times tonight where he just sort of put the ball into a space and was like, I'm just going to try and stride there. And guess what? He strode. There are a couple of times where you saw him win the ball back with such ease or just stride out and move away from one of the opposition. Now, I'm not saying this was the hardest midfield to compete against. I genuinely think that Liverpool haven't really competed against an able midfield, possibly a mobile midfield against Nottingham Forest and an able one there, but not really one that's going to challenge them. And I think overall, I'd say the press and the very simple things that Liverpool are doing at the moment are working, and it's giving Gravenberch and McAllister the latitude to step out. It's also giving McAllister the space to step into what they call the leadership group, at least in press circles, where it is Van Dijk, I think it's Robertson, Trent's in there. It's a couple of guys, kind of a core set of people who are the leaders within the side. McAllister has been brought into that inner sanctum of this Liverpool team, and I think it's important to see people like that in there. Not only because you want to see a leadership circle grow. I think Liverpool have had those kind of natural silent leaders for quite some time. Excuse me, sorry about that. But what you do want to see, I think, is a very conscious shift in how power is shared within the team. I think at times under Klopp, it felt like it could sort of stick in certain areas, and maybe it felt like we wanted certain players to pull us through certain games. And, you know, I get that. Like that's very key. This is the slot era now, and we need to see the dynamic shift. We're seeing the happiness and the kind of the bonding between the team very publicly, which I really love. And I think we're seeing that in the evolving relationships. But we're also seeing some of these leadership and kind of leadership roles be reevaluated. And, you know, people like Konate are suddenly more important in the team. Gravenberch probably wouldn't have been a leader, but now he really shows a confidence, not arrogance, but confidence out on the field that allows Liverpool to, I'd go as far as to say, take away from the opposition's confidence out in the field. On the other side of that, there are so many players who just lead by example within this Liverpool team. Mo Salah is 100% one of those guys. Mo Salah has been just one of those people in recent years who leads through scoring goals, leads through being in the right position at the right time, leads through being able to get his head back up and going, right, we didn't quite nail that one, but we're going to nail this one. And I think, you know, obviously it's reflecting his goal record, top scorer in the Champions League, top scorer in Europe, I think, for Liverpool. He, excuse me, I still got this cough. He still is very, I think he's above now in terms of goals to game ratio and return, above people like Ian Rush. He's definitely above people like Kenny Dalglish. I've got to talk about Dalglish at some point because I put Dalglish on my Mount Rushmore of Liverpool players and managers. And there is a very weird revisionist history of people who don't understand what Kenny Dalglish did back in the day, back when Liverpool was still becoming, and we're very much in the pomp of what Liverpool were at that point. People don't know what Kenny Dalglish did for this team. If you're down in the comments, just, you know, and you are an older Liverpool fan, leave some of your best Kenny Dalglish memories, because a lot of these younger fans aren't aware of those things. And I'm seeing some blatant disrespect to possibly the greatest Liverpool figure, not player, figure of all time, alongside Shankly and Paisley and everyone else in that boot room leading into the modern era. So, yeah, like, I think there's a genuine want to be a better team from this Liverpool side. And Mo Salah is clearly one of those guys. He's clearly competitive. Would have been easy tonight for Slot to say, you know what, you shouldn't actually be out there. Like, we need you. Well, do we need you against Palace? Yeah, I think we probably need him in every Premier League game. But, you know, we need you to be fit. We need you to last over the season. We've seen you drop away over the last few years. Let's not let that happen too soon. A lot of people talking about already a dip for Salah. I think that was a bit of a response this evening. What's weird about it is the goal that he actually scored, I don't think was one of the better Salah moments within the game. He kind of let the ball get away from him, did like this little shuffle that I think a lot of coaches would probably say, well, the ball's away from him at that point with a better centre-back, with a better central midfielder. That ball's just taken off him, but he had that space. And like I said in my preview, I think Liverpool will score from the edge of the box in that area, because when we pin those opposition back, and that was something that Bologna were very prone to do, we'll be able to get lots of space in those areas and just exploit that time after time. I said I thought it would be a central midfielder in Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones or possibly Gravenberch. Turned out to be Salah, fair enough. We're all sharing that kind of 17, 18 area out in the field. Point is, there are those leaders. And then I want to talk about a leader, someone that I think is getting a lot of heat at the moment within the Liverpool fan base. And it confuses me a little bit. I get the frustrations. I get the small flicks that people don't like from Dominic Szoboszlai. I get the moments that he loses the ball are frustrating. The work rate, the winning of the ball, the harrying of the opposition, the constant pressure that they're under, the way that people are constantly having to check their shoulders, always checking their mirrors, spec style, for him just approaching them, winning the ball back, always part of a quad or a trio and winning the ball back, or even a duo at times. And it just makes it so uncomfortable for the opposition to constantly just be in the anxiety mode of, what if one of those guys reaches a leg out? Similar to Darwin Nunez, actually. I thought that tonight. I know in the commentary on TNT, they were saying things like, well, it wasn't the most eventful 45 to 60 minutes for him. It didn't feel like he really did all that much. I really enjoyed the work ethic. I really enjoyed the input that he has into the team. I know he had that offside goal, a little bit frustrating, because could he have already gotten that goal without being offside anyway? Could he have curved his run? Is that something that we possibly want to see a natural striker doing at this point in his career? Or is it something which, will evolve and evolve and evolve? Or is it just that we're telling him, run in this fashion, do this, and you'll get it in the end? It would have put us more comfortably up at the time. It probably would have put Liverpool in a better position. Well, of course it would as a goal. But at the same time, those kind of things are very frustrating. Seeing Liverpool's number 9, which he is, it's not grasping the basics, but not applying those basics can be frustrating as a fan. Obviously, I don't have any experience in playing in that exact position. I don't know how hard it is to bend that run. I know that from 5-a-side or 7-a-side, but I don't know that from a top game. And I know how much extra running he does for the team. Not only when he loses the ball, but if someone else loses the ball, he tried a couple of little flicks out there. And I think a lot of the time, like these new, younger players who possibly look like they love themselves a little bit, probably have a bit of a, not an arrogance complex, but they want to prove that, hey, my way of playing too, and my brilliance, my beautiful play can be incorporated into this game, can frustrate the Anfield crowd. And what was interesting was early on there was that report that Slot had banned players from flicks and back heels in training because they wanted to just nail, when you're facing each other, the basics. Well, that seems to have now been something which has moved on from. And I got to admit, it was reflected in those opening games. We saw Liverpool really going through the motions, and a lot of players very openly opening up their body, moving around the ball, and then redistributing it. And it seemed to work relatively well. Now, obviously, Arne Slot's going to want his players to be 360 players, but he's going to want them to know when to use that. And there are a couple of times when Nunez and Szoboszlai this evening seemed to want to flick on that wasn't quite there, and seemed to want to do something where it was a bit like, oh, we'll just try this. At times it sort of worked in the Klopp era because of the movement of the other players. But it's getting a little bit frustrating at this point, I think, for the Anfield crowd in particular, but also just for Liverpool fans online. They talk about him losing the ball a lot. It's a very easy stick to beat a player with, especially in that position. You're going to be taking more risks. It's a very congested part of the field. Opposition are always going to congest those parts of the field as well because they know it's a place they're going to win the ball back, but also where Liverpool want to build up. Of course, they're going to want to stop that, break that down, make sure that doesn't happen. That is absolutely fair enough. But I also think if he's more careful with the ball, he probably gets away with that more, and we see more of that quality. The people who are saying things like Szoboszlai is going to be moved on from this side, Curtis Jones isn't good enough, all those kind of things, both those guys have got quality. Quality doesn't just leave these guys overnight. I think it's really bizarre to say things like that. And frankly, if you've not watched Szoboszlai's other games, if you don't know why he's captain of his national team, if you don't know why he is so important to this Liverpool team, I would encourage you to just go away and look a little bit at what it is that he does for those sides, but also what he is doing for our side at the moment. I think that's really key. And then there's obviously Luis Diaz and Andy Robertson. There's a combo on that side. I think Robertson has lost a stride of pace. There's times where he can look like he's running through custard just a little. And it's not a criticism. His awareness of the game, his reading of the game is obviously fantastic. And I love him as a left back. What he's done for us, I think he's an all-time Liverpool great. But it's difficult sometimes to watch a guy struggling either with fitness or with physical capability. It would frustrate me if someone said that of me, so I'm kind of reticent to do that, and I'm reticent to make it a criticism. It's just more of an observation. There was a time tonight where a young winger was kind of catching up on him a little bit, and I was a bit like, uh-oh. But, the spacing for passing always seems to work for Liverpool right now. One or two times where actually Alisson the ball came back out and it hit a player or whatever, because the pass was a little slow, but that wasn't really Robertson's fault. That wasn't really Van Dijk's fault. It's just the way the ball goes. It's the way their pressing is going to work sometimes. And I think overall it was pretty positive. But them as a combo, they're great. There's a lot of self-sacrifice on both sides from both the fullbacks. You saw it for Salah's goal this evening. Trent had the overlapping run. It allowed Salah so much space because it pulled the fullback off or the winger off, and then the fullback was on the inside. And that really worked for me. Like, I really enjoy watching these fullbacks under and overlap. And that's a huge part of Arne Slot's ball in the first place. Huge part of why these teams work so well is because there is so much self-sacrifice. Then there is the Trent aspect. I said it in the preview, I think that switch is always going to be on. It was. I think there were times tonight where, again, you watch that wand of a boot just strike through the ball, left or right boot, and you just see why Trent is such a magic player in any team. You can imagine him not only in this Liverpool side, but in the Klopp era, in Benitez, Houllier, any of those eras, and just see him play brilliant football. It's frustrating that he doesn't quite look at home at the moment. It's frustrating that actually a lot of the time, because you hear these narratives, I don't know if you feel similar, you kind of see him in that Real Madrid shirt, you see him almost fitting in with that profile and it being like, oh, like, you know, that's how that's going to go. It's very frustrating as a Liverpool fan. I hope that there are contracts sorted out soon, because obviously I'd love to keep him, and to lose him on a free would be absolutely devastating as Liverpool fans. So very frustrated, but at the same time trying to be patient, seeing where that goes, and probably looking at all three of the players who are out of contract end of the season, probably them delaying it more than Liverpool delaying it at this point, and going, well, what more can we squeeze out of this deal? How long can I keep FSG, Edwards and Hughes waiting? And how long is it going to be until I can just sign a new contract and get that upgrade? Frustrating, but fair. Subs equally look pretty good. I was very surprised, actually. I mentioned Cody Gakpo in the preview. Maybe it would have been nice to see him play again. I think he merited that after the AC Milan game, where he seemed so pivotal, where he seemed so active. Came on, was very active again. Really enjoy his flicks. Really enjoy actually what happens on that side of midfield for the centre midfielder. Either Gravenberch or whoever it is on that side. And also Jones kind of gravitates towards that side. There's a nice little... there's a nice amount of space that he affords them because he attracts players. I think Gakpo has quite a gravity to him. There's always a bit of inside space there. There's always something for the six to drive into. Works really nicely. Works brilliantly in the slot system. And also give Van Dijk a little bit of extra, just a bit of room there for him to pass into and even just look up the field into. The midfield seems to clear a little bit. Someone drops a little bit deeper and it works really nicely for Liverpool. Both goals this evening, real, great quality goals. I think Liverpool could have created more. The cross from Salah to McAllister, brilliant. McAllister finishing off really well. I've already mentioned more about him. Diaz probably could have finished that as well. Quite a few offsides this evening. We got caught offside quite a lot, a little bit frustrating. But also for the second goal, just a real classic Mo Salah goal. Salah with an assist and a goal. It's why you have him in the team. It's why the stats are so high. It's why he's seen as one of the all-time greats. And it's kind of satisfying to see him having that relationship with the fans, enjoying this back and forth, the Archer celebration, the adoration, and the relationship he has in either the end of his career at Liverpool or in the middle of the twilight of that is interesting to see. Great to see, by the way, some of the other subs this evening. I actually enjoyed the Curtis Jones cameo. I mean, it was a bit more than a cameo, but he, obviously came on for Szoboszlai quite late. Same for Conor Bradley, for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Both those guys had pretty good cameos. Quite enjoy what Curtis Jones does. Really enjoy the way he moves the ball. Moves it differently to Szoboszlai. He's a slightly different 10, whatever that runner role is. And in fact, he plays a little bit deeper to almost make Liverpool into a midfield 3 rather than the 2. I did enjoy Gakpo for that 20 minutes. Costas, I felt, picked up an unfair yellow, fair enough, but a weird unfair yellow. And actually, I think Ibu picked up one as well. A couple of notes on Ibu. First of all, towards the end of the game, he was told to calm down. Fair enough, good management. The yellow seemed crazy to me. That is a natural thing to do on a corner. And actually, when I was watching the end of the Real Madrid game, Rudiger was doing exactly the same thing. Referee didn't even note it, didn't even seem to care about it. The referee was just a little too hot on it this evening. Got through the game. If you can get through it, great. Could he have impacted the game? Possibly. Was he trying to level things out? I'm not quite sure what he was trying to do there. Didn't quite work for me. At times it seemed to interrupt the first half a lot more than the second. He seemed to be able to let it run in the second a little bit more, but just frustrating to watch overall. And Ibu picked up a needless yellow. Kind of same for Van Dijk, to be honest. Like the arm just went across the opposition player. The opposition player goes down, puts Liverpool a bit on the back foot. We didn't really want to have to bring on another centre-back. We didn't really want to have to disrupt that as a partnership. It's frustrating. I mentioned Alisson a bit earlier. I'll finish on this. I feel like Alisson is, obviously, he's so competent, and ideally he'd be at Liverpool for the next decade if he can play until the age of 42. Happy birthday to him, by the way, he's 32 today. The point is, with him, there are times where, obviously, he's got that confidence. He can go past a player and then redistribute it, or he can receive it and redistribute it back out to where it came from. Clearly, there's a way that Slot wants the ball moved, and he's very cognizant of that. Great goalkeeper in that sense. Very big presence in the box. Didn't actually have to make all that many saves tonight. But there was a couple of times where the ball out, it either went exactly to Salah's feet, or it's just kind of in a rough area. And I feel like Salah feels like one of his only out balls. It would be great if on the other side Luis Diaz could be that, or if Darwin Núñez could be that. But there are times when it sticks to Salah, it goes to Salah, it's really impressive. When it goes the other way, it can be a little bit frustrating. Those are minor tweaks. There was one time where it hit the head of a player. I think he was aiming for probably like a Diaz-type position. Just again, frustrating to watch. Don't want to lose the possession like that. I think we lost possession quite needlessly again this evening. No need for stuff like that, really. And we'd be so much more in control. We'd have so much better stats. There was that stat that popped up at one point where it was like, oh, they've made more passes more accurately than us. I don't think you just... I don't care about how many passes we make. If we win the game and it's the way we win, great. But for me, I do care in those moments where I'm like, right, you think that's an indicator of where these two teams are at. And if they're outdoing us at our own game, if they're outdoing us in general kind of on top, that frustrates me. We should be in control. Liverpool, real quality side. Bologna, maybe slightly below where they should be in Serie A. I think they probably deserve to be a little bit higher. And you could see later on when they brought on a couple of experienced players, maybe those guys could have given us a bit more trouble. Their number 9 up front were highlighted in the preview. And also then when they switched out their wingers for people who could just run at those fullbacks. It's just a little bit, it worries me again. And I'll finish on the negative, which is also positive. We will see in the coming weeks how this team cope with adversity, with quality, with the step up. Palace, obviously a very frustrating team to play, but then we have an international break. And then it is the likes of Chelsea, Leverkusen, Arsenal, some big names in there. I think Newcastle are in that run as well. And I just kind of want to make sure that, I'm sure Slot feels the same, this team are ready for that. Anfield feels ready. Liverpool feel ready to kind of see. And it's going to be an interesting November. I think it's going to be a really interesting late October, interesting November. And then obviously the Real Madrid game. Madrid lost this evening. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you've looked at the group, you'd have gone, okay, well, we get 2 shots at these guys. Like maybe we can get a draw and a win, or maybe we can get something out of these 2 fixtures. The frustration comes. We only get 1 big punch at Real Madrid, and they've kind of taken part of that energy away, that they're going to be approaching Anfield a lot hotter, obviously after the next game week, because they've already had the loss against Lille. They were very frustrated. Mbappe looked frustrated coming off, going into the dressing room. I would almost rather they were a little softer coming into Anfield. But I also like they need to come here and get something. Possibly means they have to come out and play. They probably would have done that anyway at Anfield. It's still just interesting to see the way that this new group is shaping up. And I think the thing about this new group is, first of all, it encourages managers at 2-0 down to bring on a striker, which is what happened with Bologna this evening. Because, what have they got to lose? And it also encourages players and teams to keep playing right until the end. It's a really great move. It's a really great shift. It's playing out really well. And it is great to watch. Really enjoying this. So I know there are some teething issues. But I still think it's an improvement on the 4-4s or the 8-4s or the however many 4-4s there were. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If I've missed anything. If I've not been quite comprehensive enough for you guys. Again, I think it's down to focus and application. That really falls on Slot, and I mentioned that earlier. So let me know in the comments below. There's Discord down there. There's a Patreon if you want to support the work we do. There'll be membership early next week. And of course, join me on the weekend for that Crystal Palace game. Appreciate you guys, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love. Bye.